You go through the arches, you know, you go across this little stream, you go through the arches into this beautiful garden, boxes, you know, the garden boxes, all these different, you know, varieties, and then you have trees, and then you, I mean, it's just amazing. She gave me an onion that was, I think, rough estimate, something like that. I mean, you know, it's like, wow, you know, this could be a basketball. And I was like, wow, and you know, Dwayne, you know, he was just smiling. Margo and I were looking at this going, whoa. And he goes, yeah, I pulled it out of the garden last, what was it, like 6 months earlier or something like that. And here is this onion that is firm, and I'm going, you know, you almost hated to eat it because it was so beautiful. I think we have a picture of it somewhere because we had to take a picture. But you know, I think when we start talking about quality produce, that onion, even though Dwayne had pulled it out of the ground, you know, 6 months earlier, was as fresh as anything that I could have gone to the store and gotten. And I think that what we see when we go to the grocery store, we're seeing I'll call it an inferior produce. We're not seeing the quality that is going to be sustained. Yeah.
Just because I did a lot of research and had a reason for it. When things get refrigerated, in other words, if you pick potatoes out of the ground, you store it, you know. But if you refrigerate them, and the problem with industrial refrigeration, like, you know, when they're in the warehouse and everything, they're just below freezing. They don't freeze them, but they're so cold. Of course, that stops the enzymes from growing. But our refrigerators aren't like that. And so when you refrigerate something, you actually damage the enzymes. They can't protect themselves. It'll rot a lot faster. It won't keep.
I'm talking about bringing it from the store. There's
Well, I
two
know.
little leaves.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
know. And
Yep.
and a lot of the stuff, if they're not organic, is radiated. And
Right.
so-
And
just to
especially
give you
where
an
it's coming
example,
from.
my father, he made sauerkraut, okay?
Uh-huh.
And he couldn't buy, he would tell me, he says, oh, you can't buy cabbage from Walmart. He goes, it'll just rot. You can't get it to start sprouting, you
No.
know? And he says, just because there's no enzymes in it to
No.
start it, you know?
Yeah, they've been wiped out.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Yes, Tony.
Well, I think part of the problem with the deterioration of food is the industrial farming, because crops are grown over and over in certain areas. And even though they do rotate them, it still extracts all the minerals and nutrients out of the ground that feed the plant to make it grow a good crop. And then the other contribution to some of maybe the deterioration is all the pesticides and herbicides, because it's industrial farming.
Right.
And that has an
Right.
effect.
Yep, absolutely. So we've got multiple variables and things that are impacting, but you know, it's just so amazing when, you know, I'm never going to forget that onion, because that was organically grown and had been out of the ground for at least 6 months, as I recall, and I'm just like, wow, that onion was incredible. You know? Yes.
I don't know why, but I went ahead and bought some red leaf lettuce because it looked good.
Uh-huh.
And I looked over at the organic stuff and it looked like it had been run over by the ranch truck.
Right, right.
And so this had really good color, and so I brought it home, stuck it in my refrigerator.
Yeah.
A week later I thought, well, that's no good, I'll just throw it out. A couple days after that I pulled it out. It was perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe if we buy the lettuce with the fuller colors,
Mhm.
we're
Well-
gonna end up with the enzymes and the
Right.
minerals there to protect.
Right, and we already know, just based off of what we've been studying, that the color is going to add another spectrum of phytonutrients.
Right, but
You know.
also preserve it.
And may indeed play a role there, so
We don't know how long it's
pretty
been
fun
sitting
stuff.
before
But
it got to the shelf or.
yeah, isn't that a bummer when you go and you're looking at organic and it does look like it got ran over by the ranch truck? You know, that's well said.
On the produce, correct me if I'm wrong, but once you tear the leaf or cut it, it releases enzymes that tell the plant to biodegrade. So you don't want to buy pre-cut anything,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because that just tells it to break down.
Yep, fresh as possible.
Yeah, whole
Yep.
as possible.
Yep, whole as possible, absolutely. So I also included this, like I mentioned, the broccoli. This was actually page 63, and I just thought, they didn't have broccoli with the cabbage, because the cabbage, component, we're just really talking about foods for the stomach. And broccoli, they feel, is so important. You'll notice there it says at the top, middle, foods for the heart. And broccoli is just so potent in a variety of vitamins and minerals that they actually moved the broccoli over there. And they talk about the properties there, richest in protein, calcium, provitamin A, otherwise known as beta-carotene, and vitamin C. It's also rich in potassium and low in sodium. Contains anti-carcinogenic, sulfurated phytochemicals, as do all cruciferous vegetables. And that's kind of, that family, the cruciferous, I think that's, one of the real positives there. Coronary disease goes into, some of the benefits there. Obesity, diabetes. Again, every diabetic, when we are eating foods that are more whole, we've got the fiber. We've talked extensively about fiber, and I just love coming back around because it is so important. Fiber gives us that extended release benefit. So we don't get glycemic spikes when we eat some broccoli. Well, part of it is simply because, it's not a high sugar, food, but it's that fiber that's found there is going to, again, just kind of moderate our total body response. Cancer, nobody wants cancer. Nobody wants autoimmune disease, processes where our body's attacking itself. And, having an individual this week with Charcot-Marie syndrome, and I actually had Charcot-Marie tooth syndrome. And I'm sitting here going, I've heard of a lot of different syndromes, but I literally had to go look this one up before I saw this patient, because I'm going, what in the world? What is going on with their body? What's happening? And when it turns out that syndrome is I call it MS's cousin, where we have demyelination of the nerve sheath, but it happens on the peripheral, so it starts in the feet and hands, and it kind of starts working in. It starts working up the legs. It starts working, from the hands in, and it's just amazing, all these different things that can go wrong. And I so enjoyed visiting with this young lady whose family history is very strong with this particular medical disorder. And I asked her a question. I said, your mom's been seen at UC Davis since 1989, and a variety of medications and means of trying to suppress the body's immune system. Well, you all know in this class what some of the pros and cons are there. I suppress the immune system so it doesn't, the body's not attacking itself. Now I've just opened the door, right, to a host of other issues. And this young lady looked at me and she goes, nobody's ever talked to us about, the role of nutrition as a tool. She goes, I've never really, had that was never really on the radar. But she goes, it's interesting that you bring up the fact that autoimmune disease processes can be triggered by things even that we eat, stimulating that total body response. And she goes, wow, I want to learn more. And it was just really a fun kind of opening wedge, if you will, to that whole mindset that we all have in this class, that food is medicine. Yes?
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, go ahead.
So what kind of goes wrong when your white blood cells misidentify a foreign object? I mean, how do they get the wrong message all the time?
And basically, great question. How does that happen? Well, genetics. in this young lady's family. We're talking about a genetic, I think her mom's, mom, and I mean, it just really went back, and everybody in every generation, someone would have this disease. In fact, her younger brother, I believe, had passed, and they actually post-mortem biopsies, everything verified that he indeed had this, disease. And so basically, when we look at, some of the things that trigger the autoimmune, processes, we talk about gluten. Well, and I think, Dr. Mitchell actually talks about that in our little textbook, Understanding Nutrition, where gluten can actually be similar to our own body's protein. And so our body can get a little confused there, especially if our body's immune system is already kind of hyperactive. And then the discussion of meat and dairy having a similar role there. And that was definitely part of the discussion this week with this individual. And they were just like, whoa, that is so interesting. Never really thought about that before. Yes?
Kind of makes you wonder what's setting it off, and what have they been familial consuming that has aided in this coming out. And it may be that some of the kids just don't like to eat whatever it is, and so they don't develop it. It's astounding, the research that can go off of this.
Absolutely, and I think that's kind of the exciting part, is when we have someone that may even have that diagnosis, yet their symptoms, whatever diagnosis that we're dealing with, they may see an improvement of symptoms because they have modified lifestyle. Yes?
Since we're talking, you mentioned theories, and I once read that one of the problems, like she was talking about, is toxicity of metals and
so heavy metal toxicities can be a.
And there's so much more of that.
Right. So that can definitely. So you have a genetic predisposition. You have environment, or lifestyle that exposes you to more heavy metals. Again, now we kind of have that creation of that perfect storm, and off we go to the races, right? Yes.
Well, I know we talk about you don't eat this and that to clog
Sure.
up the arteries, heart attack, whatever.
Right.
But what about diseases like the myelin sheath or Huntington's?
Huntington's.
Is there any food you can eat that would diminish the symptoms, make it go away?
And basically, you take anybody with Huntington's or MS or this Charcot-Marie tooth syndrome, and just all these very bizarre, and then you take someone with heart disease, you take somebody with diabetes, you take somebody with hypertension, you take somebody with any other medical disorder, and there's going to be one recommendation. You know what that recommendation is going to be? Did you hear? Plant-based diet. Why is that? Because with a plant-based diet, we are going to decrease the inflammatory components and inflammation, as we have talked about on just about every front. If I'm seeing someone with diabetes, if I'm seeing someone with weight issues, if I'm seeing somebody with cardiovascular issues, what's going to happen if we decrease the inflammation within their own body?
Your body will start healing.
Your body's going to start healing. And I think that is the sole purpose of this class. To, again, as we are all on this journey together, to understand that to achieve complete health, I can't eat pork chops 3 times a day. Just like I was sharing last week, and I've had patients that love pork chops so much, that was their meals. 3 times a day, I'm going, okay, wow. Are they going to be healthier doing it one time a day and incorporating other types of foods, more plant-based? And the answer is yes. Yes.
You basically answered the question for me, but on MS, you said inflammation, we need to eliminate the inflammation. Okay, so the things that cause inflammation, like we've talked about it before, bad oils, sugars, bad sugars, but there's also good sugars too. Does that cause an inflammation? Because if MS is affecting us, that's down the spinal cord, right? Okay, so then we've got to get rid of the bad stuff, and I know there's a list of them, but you eat good wholesome potatoes or stuff that has starch in it, it converts to sugar. Does that affect? Does that affect the MS?
And so depending, if I'm standing here today and I go, you know what, I have some sort of cancer. Okay, so the treatment plan for me is going to be different than the treatment plan for you folks, because the treatment plan for me is going to say, you know what, I may want to eliminate bread. I may want to eliminate fruit. I may want to eliminate other sources of whole foods that actually are higher in sugar, because I want to starve the cancer. There's a scan. It's called a PET scan. Okay, so if I have a patient that I'm seeing and I'm just really concerned, I was visiting with an individual. I'm going, so have you had a PET scan? And they go, we were just talking about that, and I think I'm referred. Well, what's the PET scan going to show? Well, the PET scan's actually going to show if an area, if they have a lesion, it's going to actually look at that lesion and it's going to be able to assess glucose uptake. Okay? Cancer feeds off of sugar. So the PET scan actually will scan and look at that lesion and be able to assess what's the glucose uptake of that lesion. And by a PET scan, they can then say, yeah, if somebody, they're not sure what's going on, they're going to do a PET scan of certain parts of the body or the whole body, and they're going to look at, okay, what do we have going on? And with cancer, we are then going to see an area of increased glucose uptake. So if my diet is decreasing the inflammation, high in fiber, because it's a plant-based diet, I have more short-chain fatty acid production, like we've talked about with this study of dietary compounds. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting here going, wow, now I don't have as much sugar available for that cancer to actually utilize. I am now creating an environment that's not going to be friendly for cancer. And on the way, I'm creating an environment that's not going to be friendly to diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease, all these other things that are so prevalent. And while we're at it, we might as well clean up some of the GI symptoms, right? Get rid of some dyspepsia, get rid of the GERD, make it so I don't have to pop Tums all the time, or take proton pump inhibitors like Nexium, Protonix, Omeprazole, or Prilosec over the counter. And it gets exciting when we can start realizing this all ties together. Our GI tract, this study, we talked about our GI tract is 100 times more metabolically active than our liver. That has just completely blown me away. And even though we've been on this study for a few months, I hope none of you got bored. Because I'm just going, wow, 100 times more metabolically active. The floral balance in my GI tract is affected by whether I eat fruits and vegetables or not. If I don't eat many fruits and vegetables and I eat more meat and dairy, now I have higher bad bacteria counts than good. If I reverse that, I have higher good bacterial counts than bad. And I'm sitting here going, whoa, wait a minute. And now when we start talking about prebiotics, you know, everybody goes, yeah, probiotics, that's available over the counter. I can go buy those capsules. I recommend if I'm prescribing somebody an antibiotic, I'm going to say, I also want you to go down to the pharmacy and pick up over-the-counter probiotics, like Culturelle. 1 capsule a day, has a variety of strains of organisms. And I'm going to have you take that probiotic at the same time as the antibiotic, because I want to reculture the gut with the good bacteria, and I want the good bacterial counts to stay high as possible, because I do not want the antibiotic wiping out the good and the bad. Make sense? So we're sitting here going, wow, that's a probiotic. So what's a prebiotic? What's that?
A precursor.
A precursor. So the prebiotic,
So you take it and your body makes
the prebiotic actually is food for the probiotic. Okay? So in other words, it fuels the organisms that are in our GI tract. And then there's the symbiotics, and symbiotics are a combination of both pro and pre. So pretty fascinating stuff. And I am amazed. Did you folks realize that the time has almost gone for this session? But I am just going, I encourage you to take those handouts. Most of you should have the dietary compound, because I've been giving you that piece by piece over the last several months. But I threw that together last night, and this morning stapled them all together, up through the prebiotics section there. And I would encourage you, if you just need a little bit of easy reading, you know, before you go to bed, take, I heard that snicker over here. Read just a little bit about the prebiotics. And then there are some list of foods there that they go into, and I'm going to probably elaborate upon that here in a couple of weeks, because I think it's really important. We were talking about earlier, you know, bananas. There are so many foods, you know, out there, and I'll give you a heads up as you're reading this before you fall asleep. Don't miss out on the part that says, you know what, protein is not real good because of all the different byproducts that are produced. Protein is really not a good prebiotic. And so it's kind of interesting when we look at the variety of foods, we're going to find again those plant-based foods are going to actually be best for the prebiotic and to qualify for the definition of a true prebiotic that can benefit our overall health. And then of course there's just that little section on polyunsaturated fatty acids. And then we're going to dive in a couple of weeks, we're going to dive into the diet-derived bioactive metabolites produced by the gut. And I'm hearing excitement. But so we're going to hit that. We're going to touch on the polyphenols, and I'm sure we're going to have a very spirited discussion about that. I'm going to probably tiptoe through some of the chemical compound changes, but I'm going to make those available for you as well, because then you can look at all those different carbon, you know, based molecules and see what the differences are and how they are affected by the microbiome and microbial balance in our GI tract. Okay, fun stuff. And then I'm hearing that there's going to be a like to continue the thought processes that food is medicine. And so we're going to be talking about specific foods and some of the applications. Yes?
Well, one of the reasons I want to continue in that vein
Yeah.
is because I try to eat a lot of blueberries because they're supposed to be the top of the list of
Right.
antioxidants.
Right, right.
And now it's red cabbage.
Sure.
And that's a lot cheaper. You find out stuff in this class. And I'd like blueberries more than red cabbage, but for a lot
They're-
of folks, that red cabbage is a
Right.
lifesaver and
Yep.
it's not as expensive.
Absolutely,
Just
and
make sure
I tell you
blueberries-
what, blueberries are always gonna be part of the equation whenever
Yeah,
possible.
like,
And
Yeah.
black rice to the cheap, better than blueberry
Okay.
list too.
You
All
can
right.
Stretch,
Yeah, there we
stretch
go.
the blueberries and mix your cabbage and blueberries together and
Oh,
make a drink.
that sounds almost combustible. Go ahead.
I do that.
When you're
Thanks
talking
for the
about
hint.
classes, you know,
Yes.
I mean, we're breaking it, we're kind of
With some Brussels sprouts.
I think it's a little confusing because we're just talking about a plant-based diet here.
Right, right.
And food is medicine. Now, there's a maintenance of eating. In other
Right.
words, you feel good, but you want to stay healthy. So there's a maintenance, and that's a certain diet in itself.
Mhm.
Now, if there's a certain problem, then there's elimination and adding to
Right.
create
Offset.
acceleration
To address that issue.
Right, so lots of times, so you could break it up maybe on like information and really cover all the foods that work on that.
Right.
And so you
Right.
can break it up that way if you're bringing in food as medicine, because
Right.
medicine is seen to be for a certain disease. you might
Right.
say.
And you know, and I think, Gene, that is the goal. I think every individual in this class, I don't want there to be confusion. I want there to be an enjoyment and an understanding that, yeah, while food is medicine, like was pointed out earlier, you know, that makes it sound like, oh, great. It's not something I can enjoy, it's something that I'm going to use if I have a problem. And so when we are developing a lifestyle, the difference becomes that, yeah, what I eat for breakfast, you know, this morning, and what I'm going to eat for lunch, and what I'm going to have for dinner, and knowing that a meal schedule isn't going to make a difference, the portions, the food choices, there's got to be a balance there. I've got to enjoy what I'm doing, and if I pull up to the table at breakfast and I look at what I have there with a mindset of, great, I got to take my medicine, we're not going to enjoy this. And so we've got to find that balance, and that's when we start talking about other foods as medicine. Just, again, wrap your mind around the fact that what we are talking about is this food can have a even greater benefit for this disease process. However, how can we incorporate this like red cabbage, like any other foods that we may like, Brussels sprouts? How do we balance that in and get that nutritional spectrum to prevent disease? It's a big deal, but we've got to enjoy it. That's the only way our smiling muscles are going to work. Okay? Okay, so the box, Margot's little red box back there, be sure, grab some cards, take them home, fill it out, write down prayer requests, write down, yep, and they will be confidential, thank you very much. And recipes, so anything that you come across, again, encouraging it to be a plant-based recipe that you have tried, you have enjoyed, and if you want to share something on, put your name on that card. If you want to keep it anonymous, that's fine as well. Let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this time that we've had together today, talking about our health. We ask that you go with each individual this week and bring us all back again safely next week. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a wonderful vegetable-filled week.